So I have spent some more time with these watches here, the Fenix 7X and the Garmin Epix Generation 2. So I just want to talk with some of my experience using these watches here for, like I said, the last couple of months or 2.5 months as of recording this video. I did pre-order these and I got both of them pretty close to release date. So I guess I was pretty lucky there because on Garmin's website, at least here in Europe, they state around 5 to 8 weeks delivery time for both of these right now, which is a little unfortunate for people out there waiting for these watches here. I have been using both of these watches on and off. So if I've been wearing my 7X, my Epix have stayed at home, and I've been wearing my Epix, my 7X have stayed at home, and I've just been switching it out from time to time between these two watches. What I do primarily at the moment is just running. I have been out and trekking a few hours of hiking using these watches here, but that's pretty much to the extent I have been using them. The longest run I have done is a half a marathon wearing actually my 7X here the last week. But other than that, I run between 7 and 12 kilometers, between 45 minutes and 1.5 hours. It's pretty much the usual running time for me personally. So that's from the perspective I'm talking about. I'm not into swimming or cycling or anything like that, just primarily running. And I plan to do some hiking in the future as well, once we get into spring and summer here in my country. But first off, let's just have a look at the condition here. I've been wearing these two watches pretty much the same amount of time throughout the 2.5 months I've been using them. Like I said, I've been switching back and forward between the two, maybe wearing one for a week and then wearing the other one for a week and then back and forward like that. I do have on my Epix turned the always on screen off just to get more battery life. And since it's not really true always on screen, I found it just more consistent for me personally to just leave it on and, have to do the flip to raise or tap to wake the screen. But anyways, let's just get into the actual condition of these two watches. There is not a single scratch anywhere on these watches here, not on the bezel or on the screen itself. You can really only see the dust particles there on the screens. Other than that, no scratches at all. And these are the sapphire and titanium bezel watches, both of them. So of course should be very durable and also at the same time a little bit lightweight. Turning around the back here, I do apologize, I have not cleaned the back on these watches here. I just want to show you how they will actually look when you are wearing this watch. Currently I'm wearing my Epix there, but you can see it does get a little nasty here on the back, so do need regular cleaning. So I recommend just cleaning it every time you take it off. Take a toothbrush, and don't drop your watch. Take a toothbrush and just brush it in there with the little contact point there and leave it up to dry, and brush off all the back here because they do get kind of nasty. But other than that, no issues at all. And actually the heart rate sensor, for me in the beginning, the 7X was a little inconsistent for me, probably the worst I have had in any Garmin watch, really pretty far off, often according to my normal heart rate. But as of late, I've had no issues at all. I am running the latest firmware. I believe it's 7.35 as of this video here. So maybe that has been fixed in firmware. I'm not really sure, but as of late, I have just on my slow runs used the optical heart rate here on my wrist, and it has been working very reliably and accurately for me at least. So heart rate sensor seems to be fixed now and working fine enough for slower runs. But when I go out and do my interval runs, or also for slow runs, if I remember to put on my hard chest strap, I will definitely do so. But specifically for interval and high intensity training, definitely do still wear a chest strap if you want the most accurate result. But for more casual running, hiking and so on, I believe these optical heart rate sensors are fine enough. One other issue I had specifically with the 7X was the compass was totally out of sync. So it was pointing almost in the opposite direction of true north. So let's just go in here and see. I haven't really tested it for a few days now and see if it's actually more accurate. You can see it's still a little iffy if I have it here on the right side of my iPhone. My iPhone is definitely pretty spot on. You can see north right there. If I bring it onto get close to my iPhone, it will still be a little weird. But you can see here when I actually get it away from any kind of metal that could potentially have issues with the built-in compass, it is actually very accurate now. It doesn't really point in the opposite direction. I haven't had that happening to me, at least as of the latest firmware. So I guess that also have been fixed, but it is very easy to kind of make this compass on the 7X very inaccurate. You can see here, if you hold it close to like a metal object, this is of course a stainless steel phone. This is the iPhone 13 Pro Max. So it is stainless steel. If I remove the phone again, then it will be spot on again. And speaking of the compass, I just tried it again after making this video. And now the compass is way off again. So it seems to not have been fixed. You can see north is now like this direction here. According to my iPhone, it should be this direction, which is the right direction. I know my north from my home here. And you can see if I go into the compass and I try to actually calibrate the compass, I should follow the little guide there, just doing like so. I'll just get a calibration failed, and I'll have to try again. Calibration failed again, and it will just be like this over and over. And sometimes it won't even give me a calibration failed. It will just continue to show that little animation there, no matter how many times I try. Only thing that worked for me is actually turning off the watch, turning it on again, calibrate it, and then it will be all right for some time. But yeah, definitely the compass still has not been fixed, even though I have not really had any issues as after making this video here. And it's pretty much the same with the Epix as well. You can see if I have any kind of steel close to the watch, the compass will be a little weird. But on my Epix, it has always gone back to true north afterwards, versus my 7X. In the past, it will just stay in that like position where you can kind of manipulate it with some kind of steel. For this instance here, it will kind of just stay there, but you can see now it does go back. Still not 100% agreeing where true north is, but I believe this is definitely close enough in my opinion. And sometimes if you move it around a little bit, it will be a little more accurate. But yeah, I have not had that inaccuracy to those extremes that I had in the beginning with the 7X. And button wise, my 7X is absolutely perfect. It's very easy to press. I get a nice tactical feel every time I press the buttons. The buttons are maybe a little too easy to press if I, had to nitpick, because on a few occasions I have accidentally pressed the back button. If I just wanted to like move between screens, often I hold the watch like this and accidentally just hit the back button. And if you are in midst of a training, like a predefined training activity, it will just totally cancel that training. One of the daily trainings or whatever you are doing, totally cancel that, and you will kind of have to start over or just, of course, continue your run. But that's a little bit annoying, and it happened to me 2 times on this watch. As of yet, has not happened to me on the Epix watch yet. But these buttons are also a little bit harder to press, little more recessed, or you don't feel the same kind of movement, or you don't get the same kind of tactical feel when you're actually pressing these buttons. But I must say they have actually gotten a little bit better compared to when I got the watch. Not sure if it's me who's gotten used to these buttons here. Still, when I'm wearing gloves, it is a little bit hard to feel if I actually press the start button correctly, because it doesn't really give me that satisfying of a click. But it's definitely much better than when the watch was brand new. So yeah, these buttons seem to just smoothen up a little bit with time, but definitely not perfect. I prefer the buttons on my 7X quite a bit, but I wish they will have like a combination of these two. So the 7X wasn't as easy to press, just be a little bit firmer buttons, but still with the same tactical feel and smoothness of these buttons. That would be nice. So kind of something in between these two would be perfect for me. But if I have to choose between the two here, in terms of buttons, I will definitely go for the 7X. It is for me a little more comfortable to actually use, and also a little more satisfying when you actually click the buttons also with gloves on. I've never really been in doubt that I've hit the buttons, other than the few times that I've accidentally hit the lap button here when I wanted to do other things because I'm resting my fingers on it. And in terms of stability between these two watches, it's been mainly pretty good for me. The 7X has definitely been a little more consistent for me personally. Like, I haven't really gotten that many dropped frames as I occasionally see on the Epix 2. It's not really that common, but from time to time when you get into a widget, you will sometimes see a little bit of stutter or a little bit of lag, I guess you could call it, but it is very minor and is only from time to time. But I've also had the Epix 2 reboot on me one time, only just swiping between the widgets. It accidentally, or it just froze on me and it rebooted automatically. So it's been a little less consistent on the Epix 2 in terms of smoothness and of course overall stability. I've not had any issues when I've been tracking my activities at all. Both these watches have been rock solid for me, so I can't really complain there. It's only really when I've been using the widgets, I've noticed that the Epix 2 does have a little bit of a lag from time to time with those animations going in and out of the widgets. In terms of battery life, it's been very consistent for me between the two watches here, according to what Garmin is advertising. I haven't got that much sun here in my country at the moment. It is still spring time, so some days have been a little bit sunny when I've been wearing the watch. I've definitely been able to get some sun and charge the battery just a little bit, but not enough to actually make any significant difference. But according to what Garmin is advertising with the batteries, I think they're pretty spot on, maybe just a hair better for me at least. These are also very brand new watches, or relatively new watches rather, so the batteries of course is still 100% in terms of capacity. So this is best case scenario. It will degrade a little bit over time, but not as much because you don't really need to charge these watches as often. But with the screen off, or with the gesture mode where I had to flip the wrist or tap the screen on the Epix, I can get close to the 14 days of battery life, and that's even with like around 1 hour of GPS tracking a day. And the same with the 7X, I can get at least close to 25 days of battery life. And the screen is of course always on, and I do use the flashlight quite often, and I also use it when I run in the nighttime. I have set it to cadence mode, so it will just kind of follow my rhythm or my cadence, and it works pretty well. So battery life, definitely cannot complain. I do get a little bit of battery anxiety if I have the always on screen on my Epix 2, because I'm coming from this Garmin Fenix 7X series where you get, very good battery life like the 7X here. Maybe if you come from something like an Apple Watch where you're used to charging every day, where you get like 6 days of battery life with the Epix and the always on screen, that will seem quite a big improvement. But if you're coming from like a 6th generation of Garmin watches or previous Garmin watches from the Fenix series, I think for me at least I got a little bit of battery anxiety. I had to check a little more regularly if I had enough battery to go out and track that specific run. I do have the screen on always when I go out and do my activity. I prefer that. I don't like to have to flip my wrist to actually see my information when I actually are out and doing my activity. So for those specific scenarios, I do have the screen always on. And when we talk about the screen, which is of course the major difference between the two, other than of course the size, but if you're comparing it to like the regular Fenix 7, it's exactly the same size as the Epix there. And that OLED screen is just fantastic. And that's not probably the main reason why I actually still kept the Epix, because I am not a big fan of having to flip the wrist to watch the time. Actually, I found myself just not watching or look at the time often, because I know it will take like a short second or a little bit of a delay for me to flip my wrist, and especially when I'm out and about and out with friends and family and so on, it can be a little bit rude to actually have to flip your wrist to just look at the time, versus this one, you can just kind of peek and it will take like a split second to see the time. So I find myself just not looking at my watch that frequently when I have my Epix on, which is a little unfortunate. But for a activity and fitness watch, that OLED screen is just amazing. And also, of course, for other things, when you just go into your widgets, everything just pop on that screen. Looks nice, vibrant, the colors are fantastic. And yeah, like I said, that's the main reason why I still have the Epix, because I definitely do prefer the always on screen on my 7X. And if I had to choose just between one of these two watches as my only watch, the 7X would definitely be the watch I would go for. And I wouldn't really hesitate. I would kind of miss the screen, but I wouldn't really hesitate on going for the 7X for my personal need. But also, if you use the mapping capabilities on these two watches, if you are out in the forest, for instance, where there's not a lot of light or sunlight going through the branches and trees, it can be kind of hard to see the actual map on the 7X at times. So if I just wanted to go out for like a 1-day hike or a few hour hike or whatever, I'll kind of gravitate towards the Epix 2 because of that screen. It is not only higher resolution, but you also get a brighter and more vibrant screen, and you're actually a screen that's easier to read in both like shading condition, or when you are in the forest. Of course, there's not that much sunlight going in, so there will be a lot of shade on your watch, and it's much easier to read the Epix 2 in those scenarios, but it's actually also easier to read it when there is direct sunlight onto the watch, which is kind of a little bit strange. The 7X is definitely good, but I think I've been damaged a little bit by wearing the Epix, to be honest. I've never really complained about my other watches from Fenix series when it comes to its mapping capabilities. The first one I had was the Fenix 5X Plus. Then I have the 6X, and I have the Tactics Delta, which is pretty much the same watch, other than, of course, the design. But I've never really noticed that it was pretty hard to read outdoor in shady conditions, or when there's not really that much sunlight inside the forest and so on. It's not super bad. It's still readable, but I definitely would not like to have sunglasses on, for instance. Then I think I will not be able to read the screen at all. Versus this one here, super clear, high resolution, doesn't really matter its conditions. So if I really was dependent on the map, and if I wasn't really going out into the wilderness for a long period of time, like for weeks or so, I will definitely gravitate toward the Epix 2 for those kinds of scenarios. I feel that's a little bit better. But if I have to go out in the wilderness for a longer period of time, I still think I will choose the 7X because of the solar charging. Of course, it's a nice thing to have. The flashlight is a nice thing to have, and it is good enough once you get used to it. But definitely that screen there is the main reason why I've kept my Epix. It is fantastic for anything other than just using it as a watch, really. And in terms of GPS accuracy, it seemed to be pretty much identical between the two here. And then they're also pretty much identical at, or equally as fast as to log onto satellites, which for my instance here, I live in the city with my Tactics Delta and Fenix 6X. It could take like several seconds, like maybe even close to 30 seconds before I would actually log onto satellites. With these two here, as soon as I get out of my main entrance, out into the world, it will log onto a satellite, and I've actually had it log on to a satellite when I'm actually in my hallway, which has never happened to me before with any GPS device. So that's pretty remarkable. So I can't really say anything negative about the GPS. And for tracking, it is, in my opinion, good enough. You can see here, starting my run, this is within the first kilometers. It is a little like wobbly, but once it actually logs into place, you can see it is pretty accurate, and this is a lot better than my 6X. It's pretty much locked onto a lot of the road, but you can see here, getting to a lot of buildings here, tall buildings, it can still be a little bit weird. I am running on the smaller road here, and you can see it is a little bit off, but there's also a lot of buildings there. So still not perfect. I'm not sure if this is the GPS or if it's just the map that is a little bit off, but it is so much faster at logging onto satellites, and you can actually see what side of the road you're running on, which is exactly accurate. In my instance here, I am on the right side of the road here, running this direction, versus the 7X, or excuse me, the 6X series or the 6 series, and even before that, you know, you couldn't really see what kind of, or what side of the road you were on, and it was like, yeah, very wobbly. This one does wobble a little bit, but this is also inside the city, and there's a lot of tall buildings here. So I think very good GPS accuracy. And I don't even use the multiband function. I just use all systems. Well, we'll use all of them, GPS, Galileo, and GLONASS. But you can also use multiband, of course, if you want to use or have the equivalent of 2 GPS modules at the same time calculating your route. It will also drain the battery quite significant, but I just use the all systems, which is definitely good enough for my use case. And I have set it to every second, or track me every second. At default, it comes as smart, but that's the first thing I go in and set, is to track every second to just get the most accurate tracking on your activities. So yeah, can't really say anything bad about the GPS. It's not perfect, but it's pretty damn close to perfect and miles better than the previous generations. Also in terms of just battery life, is also get a significant improvement. I do not use music on these watches, but I've read on Garmin forums and other places that people have had issues with poor sound quality on the devices. I believe it should have been fixed now with the latest firmware as of this video, but I've not tested that, so I cannot really speak to that. I don't think the battery penalty is worth it. for these watches here. So for me, I just went out and bought the smallest iPhone I could find. I bring this with me when I go out and run, and just have Bluetooth headphones connected directly to this one here, because you will just drain your batteries on these watches here significantly if you use it with Bluetooth headphones, which is a little bit unfortunate. That's one area where there's not really a improvement in terms of battery life when you're using Bluetooth headphones on these watches, and you want to, of course, listen to music or podcast and ebooks and whatever. In terms of size, of course, 7X versus the 7/Epix 2. I'm not really sure. I'm used to really liking big watches, and that's probably my preference still. But I also kind of enjoy having a little bit of a smaller watch on from time to time. Had I only choose one, still would be the 7X. But I feel definitely a little bit lighter and smaller footprint on my wrist, especially when I'm doing interval trainings and stuff like that. Feels like it's a little bit small when it's on my wrist, but that's just kind of, from my perspective, I think it actually looks quite nice when I look at it in the mirror or when I look at it on camera here. Seem to be big enough. But yeah, I definitely like the thicker watch band there on the 7X and the bigger overall footprint on the 7X, but it can also feel a little bit big at times. But if you like big watches, of course, you only really have the option to go for the 7X. You cannot get the Epix in a bigger variant, at least not yet. But yeah, for me, the 7X is definitely not too big, and I've had it on me for kind of interval trainings, very fast-paced runs and so on. The extra weight loss compared to my Tactics Delta has been a significant improvement for me. And I use these Yo-Side band here that I can, of course, link down in the description below with all of my Garmin watches. I just love these bands. Fantastic bands. Do give me a little bit of an annoyance right there. You can see on my wrist. I do wear them relatively tight, as you can see here. The annoyance have come from this little insert here inside the watch strap, kind of digging into my wrist. But yeah, that's kind of a minor thing. I haven't really had any discomfort wearing these watch bands. And I also have these watch on 24/7. Do not like the nylon band, so that's the first thing I'll swap out, or the silicone band. I don't really like that. But the sports band or nylon bands is definitely where it's at for me. And these bands are very inexpensively, and I have made videos about those, of course. You can check those out. And I will also like to share links down in the description below for these watch bands. Definitely recommend you go and check those out. So harvesting the sun energy, I have not really been able to test that yet. The weather here in my country have been a little bit inconsistent, but you can see here, like the March 29th, I did get a little bit of sun there, but definitely not enough to do anything to the battery life. And the day before that, also get actually up to around the 100% of sun intensity there. But again, that's been pretty minor. I'm very curious to test this out in the summertime to see if it will have any kind of significant improvement to the battery life. I suspect it will actually be able to add like a few extra days of battery life if I get enough sun throughout the day or throughout the week. But yeah, like I said, I have not really been able to test that just yet. So all in all, using these watches for like 2.5 months now, I really like them. They have been pretty consistent. Actually, I've been kind of surprised at how consistent they have been, considering these are brand new watches. I haven't really had that many bugs. Like I said, the Epix did reboot on me, and I've seen some like lag in the animations from time to time, but on the most part, it has been very stable. And that goes for both of these watches here. And that's actually kind of nice to see. Not really that many bugs have been ironed out. You know, we did have the compass bug there on the 7X, seem to have been fixed now. The Bluetooth headphones bugs, I believe it was all of the 7th generation watches, which also seem to have been fixed now, and some other slight minor issues has been fixed in firmware. And Garmin has been pretty fast and pretty quick at responding in their forums online to people having issues, and also come out with a fix for those issues. So that has been pretty nice. So overall, I am very happy owner of these two watches. I plan to keep both of them going forward. Like I said, had I to pick one, it will just be the 7X. But as of now, I really like the Epix. I like the OLED screen when I'm actively using it, when in an activity or out and hiking. I don't like to wear it as much as my daily watch because it is a little bit slower at looking at times. And also, of course, you do not get the same kind of battery life as on the 7X. I really do like big batteries. I hate charging my devices, so yeah, the biggest battery is always what I will tend to go for. But if you can get either of these watches, I think you will be very happy. If you're coming for like an Apple Watch and you're really used to that OLED screen, I think it would be kind of hard to get used to that transflective screen on the 7X or the 7 series of watches. I will probably gravitate you towards the Epix series of watches. If you're used to, on the other hand, the transflective screen and you find them more than useful, you could kind of ruin it a little bit by getting the Epix, because it is kind of hard to go back to that transflective screen on certain areas. For most things, I don't really mind, but for like set mapping capabilities, definitely nicer on the Epix. Also notifications, when you get those, you also get more text and more sharper text on the Epix as well. And of course, just using those widgets, everything just pop much more on the Epix. Much easier to read in most lighting conditions, but again, the trade-off is having that screen that's not truly always on, and yeah, having that inferior battery life. So I would happily recommend either of these watches. I can also share some affiliate link down in the description below if you are interested. I don't think you can go wrong with either of these watches, although the prices haven't seemed to come down that much yet. So still is kind of an expensive or big investment. But then again, if you can have a watch like this for 3 or 4 years, I think it is justifiable. I definitely have no remorse paying full retail price for either of these watches. Or actually, I got them a little bit less expensive than retail price. But I have not regretted my purchase as of yet. And you, of course, can also get the non-sapphire version if you want a little bit cheaper option there. But you, of course, will lose out on some features like dual band GPS and also a little bit less storage, I believe. But that's pretty much it for this video. I hope to see you again in a future one. Until then, take care.